All right, so for the achievement scores, I will be going over the standard scores. For basic reading skills, he scored a 127, standard score of 127, which is in the superior range. And under that cluster, there's a letter word identification, which was 113, which is in the high average range. Word attack, 145, which is very superior. Now, under the reading comprehension cluster, we only use a subtest for passage comprehension, which is a 74. That was in the low range. For reading fluency, he got 117, which is in the high average range. Oral reading, 124, which is in the superior range. Sentence reading fluency, 114, which is in the high average range. For math calculation skills, he got an 85, which was in the low average range. Calculation, a 92, which is in the average range. Math back fluency, an 82, which is in the low average. For math problem solving, we didn't test the whole cluster. We just did applied problems, which was 100, which is in the average range. For written comprehension, he scored a 98, which is in the average range. Sentence writing fluency, 100, average range. Writing samples, 97, average range. For oral comprehension, for oral expression, he got a 91, which is in the average range. Picture vocabulary, a 94, which is in the average range. For sentence repetition, he got a 92, which is in the average range. And then last, listening comprehension, he got a 95, which if on the average. Understanding directions, 88, which is in the low average range. Oral comprehension, 103, which is in the average. Now, so the lowest achievement area here was math calculation. Now, this is a personal weakness. It is an 85, but it's still in the average range. So right now, I'm just going to explain what each achievement area means, and I'm just going to give you a brief summary. You will find that on page 14 to 22, and then also don't forget that on page 4, it kind of explains the standard scores, and it just kind of explains you the range and the descriptor. All right, so for his achievement summary, he was tested in basic reading, and the basic reading skills composite measures sight vocabulary, phonics, and structure analysis, and is comprised of 2 subtests, letter word identification and word attack. Sebastian's standard score was 127 for the composite as a whole, which is in the superior range. Great strength for Sebastian. On the letter word identification subtest, Sebastian was able to correctly read individual words aloud, and suggesting Sebastian has typical sight word identification skills when compared to his same grade peers. During the word attack subtest, Sebastian was able to pronounce nonsense or low frequency words. Overall, Sebastian demonstrated an adequate decoding skills and strategies, which is an essential component for reading. So he did great for basic reading skills. For reading comprehension, this area, the reading comprehension was not addressed as part of administration of the standard battery, but after administration of the standard battery, the area of reading comprehension was slightly abnormal, because for passive comprehension, Sebastian's standard score was a 74, which is in the low range. But he did really good in basic reading. And I'll go back and touch on that. For reading fluency, in this subtest, there are 2 subtests, the oral reading and the sentence reading fluency. So Sebastian's standard score was 127 for the composite as a whole, which is in the high average range. In the oral reading, Sebastian was able to read out loud sentences that gradually increased in difficulty. For the sentence reading fluency, Sebastian was able to silently and quickly read and comprehend simple sentences. Sebastian was able to decide if a statement was true or false, like yes or no. Overall, Sebastian demonstrated adequate reading fluency and comprehension skills, so this is really good. For math calculation skills, this test has two subtests, which are calculation and math facts fluency. Sebastian showed the ability to perform paper and pencil math computations. Sebastian's standard score was an 85 for the composite as a whole, which is in the low average range. For calculation, Sebastian was able to perform mathematical computations ranging in difficulty from simple addition facts to complex equations. For the math fact fluency, Sebastian was able to solve rapid calculations of simple single-digit addition, subtraction, and multiplication facts. Overall, Sebastian demonstrated some difficulty in the ability to solve mathematical equations, but this could be one of his weaknesses. However, his score of an 85 is still in the average range. For math problem solving, the area of math problem solving was not addressed as part of the administration of the standard battery. For written expression, this test has two subtests, the sentence writing fluency and writing sample. Sebastian's standard score was a 98 for the composite as a whole, which is in the average range. So overall, Sebastian demonstrated adequate ability to write simple sentences with fluency. For oral expression, this test has picture vocabulary and sentence repetition. Sebastian's standard score was a 91 for the composite as a whole. And for listening comprehension, this test also has two subtests, but Sebastian's standard score was a 95 for the composite as a whole, which is in the average range. So he did really good. Now, whenever I, test a student, I look at their grades, and I see that for math, he has a 92. For language arts, he has an 85. For social studies, 95, science a 90, physical education 90, art a 90, and music is a 90. So I do see that language arts is his lowest. However, it's a B, and he's doing really good. He did mention whenever I interviewed that he does feel like he has to go back. However, he loves and enjoys to read. Teacher information also, she said that he's a really good student, really smart. He occasionally gets a conduct mark, but that's it. And his academic history, he has A's and B's. So there is no concern there. He's passing. Now, for assistive technology, Sebastian is able to access the general education curriculum without the aid of assistive technology. Therefore, assistive technology devices are not recommended for Sebastian at this time. So in addition to the formal testing, as I said, I look at their grades, I look at their past years and their test scores, but he is actually reading above level. So I don't really think there's any concern there that we should have. I also look, to determine his eligibility. So does Sebastian have significant normative academic deficit? Sebastian does not have a significant normative academic deficit. His lowest academic was math calculation, which was an 85, but that is still within the average range. Does the student have significant normative cognitive deficit? Sebastian does not have a significant normative cognitive deficit. His lowest cognitive standard score is in short-term working memory, but it's a 90, and it is the lowest. However, it is in the average range. So yes, it is determined that the findings are not preliminary to the results of visual, motor, or hearing disability, intellectual disability, emotional disturbance, cultural factors, environmental or cultural disadvantage, or is not based on his language. Are there logical or empirical links between the deficit? No. So Sebastian does not demonstrate a pattern of strengths and weaknesses. So whenever I look at, deficits, I have looked at his benchmark assessments and curriculum-based assessments, and he has passed all his tests. He doesn't have any failing grades or test scores. So it is concluded that Sebastian does not display a presence of specific learning disability. Sebastian does not qualify for special education. However, I have made some recommendations that you can, work with him at home and you can work with him in this classroom. So whenever we're looking at some of his accommodations, Sebastian should be given math manipulatives to help him solve math problems. Someone needs to show him how to use them. Sebastian should also be given graphic organizers like multiplication, blank multiplication table, or a hundredths chart, because he can use that for addition, subtraction, for multiplication, for division. Now, these are interventions that can be done in classroom, or it can also be done at home. Go over addition fact families that will help Sebastian remember the addition facts, multiplication fact families that will help him remember multiplication facts, and also subtraction strategies. This will help Sebastian remember the subtraction facts. Now, this just goes back to his achievement area that he scored low on math calculation of an 85. But again, that is just that is one of Sebastian's personal weakness, but it's not, a deficit because it still falls in the average range. And now these are parent recommendations that you can do with him at home. Play math games to build fact fluency, example like rolling the dice and then adding the two numbers or subtracting the numbers or multiplying them. And then also practice facts using flashcards. So I have given you a copy of the full individual evaluation. Please go over it. And if you have any questions, please call me back. And then also, I have the notice of procedural safeguards that I'm going to give you a copy, and the parent's guide to the admission, review, and dismissal process. All right, so the notice of procedural safeguards, this is great document to have and go over. It just goes over the laws and your rights as a parent. I would like for you to go over that. And then the parent's guide to admission, review, and dismissal. This just kind of goes over what we went through today. It kind of goes over the ART process and just about the eligibility and criteria. And like I said, ART means admission, review, and dismissal. In this case, it was a admission meeting. However, Sebastian did not qualify for a specific learning disability. So once again, if you have any questions, go over these documents, and you can always call me, email me, and I can answer any of your questions. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cash, for attending the meeting. And thank you, Mrs. Fernandez, once again for coming to the meeting.
Have a good day.